There's always been some debate between self-defense and sport. Is it important to do sport, or is it the only way you can really learn self-defense? Stay tuned. We'll talk about it. Welcome to Shihan's Dojo. I'm Shihan Marty Husband, and I'm here today to help you build your martial arts skill and knowledge, or if you want to learn a little bit more about the martial arts, tell you a little bit more about it. Today I just want to talk about self-defense versus sport and the reality of it when you think about it. I'm not here to downplay sports. I'm not here to downplay self-defense the way it's taught, but there are some real things a person has to think about. In reality, this video should be hours with tons of examples, but since we don't have that kind of time, I'll just go through a 10 to 15 minute summary of what I see as in sport. For a long time, people have tried to find the best self-defense that they could take in order to defend themselves. Beside the fact of judo already being a sport back in the 40s, martial arts didn't really start making a sport appearance until late 50s and early 60s. From there, people have built upon the fact of the great fighters that have come out of there. I've watched everybody from Chuck Norris to Joe Louis. They're great martial artists and they could fight, put it out there on the floor. However, today in society we have a misconception that the martial arts themselves are weak and can't be used unless you use a certain type of martial arts. In the 60s you had karate, and a lot of people were really getting into it, and then they saw a man named Bruce Lee who basically started to change the ideas of fighting. Brilliant man. Then in the 70s came along the Kung Fu craze thanks to David Carradine, and we all know the real martial arts that they were showing there was about as fake as they come except for the stuntman that did the doubles. 80s, we saw the rise of the ninja. Now, I'm not even going to get into that storyline simply because people don't understand the true nature of ninjutsu and people capitalize too much upon the commercialism of it. Also during that time, one thing people tend to forget about was the rise of Wushu. Wushu is an excellent martial arts, great sport, and great self-defense also. But it didn't get the popularity it probably should have during that time due to the commercial craze of ninjutsu. When the late 80s and 90s come along, we see the advent of Taekwondo becoming a very popular sport. And the sad thing is, people don't know the history of Taekwondo enough to really understand where it came from. I mean, it was originally karate from Japan that somebody added some kicks that they learned when they were young kids and called it their own in order to, again, commercialize everything. That started happening in the late 40s after the war was over, but built up itself to the Olympics by the 90s. Today we see the rise of the UFC and the MMA groups. Now mind you, I love to watch a good fight, but there's one important aspect that everybody forgets about. MMA and UFC fighting are sports. Now there's a big difference between sports and self-defense. In a sport, you have two consensual fighters who are basically going to take each other on to see who is better. In self-defense, you have one consensual fighter and usually the other person who doesn't want to be involved. That means they're either being robbed, attacked, maybe even raped. So in essence today, people try to convince people that UFC and MMA are the best way to go. No, there are a lot of great martial arts out there that teach self-defense. Everything from karate to Krav Maga to sambo. I mean, just because you're doing a mixed martial arts, that's exactly what you're doing. When you start to think about self-defense, you realize the vicious nature of what's about to happen, and a person does have to become just as vicious in order to survive that type of situation. I have to laugh at some of the techniques and ideas that are out there to teach people self-defense because some of them are really atrocious. There's one I really dislike because it tells people, you have an 8-hour class and you're ready to defend yourself for the rest of your life. It's not true. Just like any other skill that you'd have to maintain in order to make sure you can process what's about to happen. Now granted, I think sport is a great way to get rid of some of the fear and learn unexpected, how to handle things, but you still have to do some live action or what I call situational action training that needs to be done in self-defense. Now mind you, I don't think every fight goes to the ground. I hear that all the time from BJJ people who really don't know what they're talking about. Think about this. Jujitsu came out, was passed down to the Gracies, and the Gracies added some stuff, and Jujitsu comes along, makes itself a sport, and takes out a lot of what the Gracies were teaching. The truth of the matter is both of those arts are incomplete in usual situations. Now there are some Jujitsus out there that teach all aspects of what they're trying to do, from ground fighting to stand-up. But one has to be aware of it and ignore the commercialism. In reality, just because the Gracies are a great fighter doesn't mean that that style is going to make you a great fighter. It may not be the type of fighting you can do. So when you're trying to consider just who or what you need to do for the martial arts or self-defense, take a couple things into consideration. Are they teaching you a basic technique over and over again when you're starting in order to get your body built up and feel how it's supposed to be done properly? 2, are they teaching realistic self-defense? I'm going to show you right here something I was trying to explain to some of my students here not too long ago. I've seen times where people have said, all you have to do is teach somebody to slap the arm up while you're being choked or smash it in order to get out of it. Well, I hate to tell you, most people aren't strong enough if a big guy grabs them around the throat to pop their arms up off them or break through it if they're trying to get their arms between them. There's a lot of things that have to take place in that type of a self-defense movement. Now, don't go around choking each other to see if you can figure it out, but understand there are lots of ways you can get out of that, but you have to be careful how they're doing it. Think about it. Logic, common sense. Just because you see some big guy take on a small guy doesn't mean it's going to work. It may only be that that person has the ability to get it to work. The other thing that really makes me mad is the overcomplication that is often taught in self-defense. You have to keep people simplistic unless they're learning a style, which is a whole other ball of wax. Self-defense cannot be so convoluted that when a person gets in a stressful situation, they won't be able to handle themselves because they can't remember what they were supposed to do in the stressful situation. That's where I think sport comes in and helps a lot, or some live training. As I mentioned earlier about training, situational training's great, but getting somebody with big pads on or somebody who knows how to handle themselves and let people who are learning self-defense be able to attack and handle it. Have them understand why things aren't going to work, like putting your keys in your hand. It'll damage your hand more than it'll probably damage the person you're punching. Or reaching into your purse to grab your mace to get somebody away. It's not going to happen unless you already have it in your hand and are ready to go. There's a lot of actions and misrepresentations that are done that way. And I think because of the media, everything we read on the internet, TV, movies, they just show you the wrong things that aren't possible. So when you're considering taking self-defense, find yourself a good school. A good stylized school is okay, a good self-defense school, boxing, what you like. However, don't fall into the commercialistic hype that something's better. If you go and train with somebody who's a purple belt in BJJ and overlook somebody who's been doing Jujitsu and is a 5th to 8th degree black belt, you're not using some common sense there. Because in reality, the purple belt's been doing it a couple years. These guys who are doing real Jujitsu, they may have done it for so long, it's second nature to them. So you're probably going to learn more from it. Second of all, make sure their instructor has something to supplement it, like pressure point tactics, control, things like that that help you to understand how to survive an attack. The most important thing in self-defense is survival. So you have to weigh that option upon yourself. Remember, in self-defense, action is always faster than reaction. So if you think you're great at reaction, it takes years to be able to be that good. 90% of the time, if the guy starts off to hit you and you don't know what you're doing or have had limited training, they're going to hit you first. Remember, in those kind of situations, the bad guy's always in charge and he knows it. So you have to take control of the situation. It's another aspect of self-defense people don't like to listen to. I think there's a conscious bias for most people out there over the decades because of the different actions they see in sport and TV. But I think that conscious bias can be recreated so you can understand what's real and what's not. I think the best sayings I ever heard was from one of the greatest self-defense masters of our time right now, Tony Blauer. He said one thing that just sticks to me when I'm training. Be careful what you practice. You might get good at it, and you might be wrong. So you have to examine your techniques. You have to understand it. Get with somebody who understands the vicious nature of self-defense and realize it's a non-consensual type of things where sports is consensual. With sports having that type of a program, there are rules. And in the street, in self-defense, there are no rules. So you can't hold back or what I call pansy back. Because if you do that, you're cheating the people that are being taught how to do self-defense. And you're also lying to them if you think telling them that they can do it in no time at all. Again, I'll talk about some more theoretical aspects of self-defense at another time. And I appreciate you listening to this here. I just wanted to have a conversation here on how I feel about sports versus self-defense. So when you're thinking about it, just remember, try to take my opinion into consideration. And if you don't like it, just tell me what you think I'm saying wrong here, and we'll have a conversation about it if you just put it in the comments down there. Remember, everybody has their opinion, and some people have the experience. I'm not saying I know everything, because I don't, but I've had 45 years of experience in the martial arts. But the thing you've got to remember is don't give in to commercial hype. It has been the undoing of many a martial artists that I have seen in my lifetime. So if you like this video, hit that like button and tell your friends about it so we can make Shihan's Dojo grow. And we hope to see you here again.